Let's jump in. First video with Sam Harris, as you can see on the screen.
Up to a point. I mean, I think some of those conversations are useful, and I keep looking for the ones that I think will be useful. Um, I mean, I think there's generally greater utility in when there's something to learn about an issue or something to figure out, bringing on someone who really knows their stuff and just helping me learn more in real time in front of my audience. So if I'm thinking about um, the consequences of Trumpism and having Trump for a second term, and just the way the rest of the world perceives us, and the loss of American leadership, and et cetera, all of that. If I bring on someone who I know I'm going to agree with, but who just knows much more about certain details than I do, I bring on someone like Ann Applebaum, right, who can just give me the view from the other side of the world, with much more historical context, and who's just deep in the weeds on the way propaganda works, and the way democracies unravel, and all the relevant historical analogies, right? So I'm not going to disagree with Anne about much, if anything, but that's not the point. The point is to hear what she has to say and to learn a little bit more each time I do that. I think that's usually more useful than me getting some person on who stridently disagrees with a position I already have.
I mean, we have like come into like this culture where it's like debate me bro culture. And I think debate is important. Conversing about ideas, sharing ideas, challenging each other's opinions and worldviews is extremely important, but not everything has to be a debate or a podcast. I think Sam is right in regards to like, yeah, if I'm interested about a subject and I have an audience, well, I'm going to bring on someone who's an expert in this field who knows more about it than I do, and let that be a resource for them as they dive deeper into the information. It doesn't always need to be a debate. I agree. Sam has debated plenty of things over the years. He doesn't do much of that anymore. And I think people are potentially upset about that he should be doing more stuff, because this video is called, response to claims Sam won't have difficult conversations, which is not true. He has difficult conversations all the time. They just happen to be him wrestling with ideas.
And I just know going into it that it's just going to be uh, an exercise in my attempting to showcase their errors, which I already understand to be errors, right? So someone who doesn't really understand jihadism at all and doesn't believe in it and thinks it's all economics and politics and bluffing. Okay, I can get that person on for another 2 hour round of brain damage, but it really is just brain damage, right? Now, it's not to say that it's not going to be useful for some people in the audience to see me hit those pitches again and again, but I've done it so many times. I'm not sure about the value of continuing to do it, and it also runs the risk of being confusing to some people anyway, because certain moves are reliably confusing, right?
Well, I think people like the conversations you're having. I think it's just it feels as though you've been just avoiding the chance at having a bad conversation, and they feel that many of them
I just
can
don't
learn
see like
from a bad
who are
conversation.
we talking about? I mean, like I'm going to talk to someone like Hassan Piker. Would that be fun?
But maybe,
No,
but
not really. I mean, I don't think anyone should be listening to this guy, right? So it's like it just seems like
well, that's a different point. I think what they're saying is there are bad conversations that they're constantly having, and they can still learn how to have a good conversation in a bad conversation, or how to
hmm.
navigate a bad conversation. And with you lately just saying, fuck it, I'm not going to have bad conversations anymore because it's just not the best use of my time, or I'm not going to spend 2 hours on this. I think that a lot of people are saying, well, even from those bad conversations, I don't think they mean the Omar Aziz
Well,
conversation
I mean, so
examples, but
I'm going to talk to Ben Shapiro. I anticipate that being a potentially uh, bad conversation, at least for half of it. I mean, half of it will agree about certain things, but part of it will be uh, exposing a fair amount of daylight between us around Trump and current American politics. So I'm going to go into that thinking this. We both might get somewhat uptight in this conversation, at least for part of it. Um, and I'm not avoiding it. I think it's useful because Ben is a serious enough person with a big enough audience that it's useful to try to kind of make some sense in his direction. Um, would I talk to Candace Owens? I don't think so. Right? I mean, she's got an even larger audience, but she's a total lunatic, right? And I'm not sure. I mean, apart from, I mean, I could approach it the way I approached the conversation with Doug Wilson, the pastor who I knew just how far out he was as a a fundamentalist, but I approached that differently than um, I might have. I mean, I was not looking for conflict. I was looking. I trust in that case. I trusted my audience to understand what's wrong with a pastor who will sign off on maybe one day bringing chattel slavery back because it's in the Bible, right? So that, like that's obvious enough that I can I don't have to dunk on that point. I don't have to say, oh well, like I just hope it's clear that I'm against chattel slavery. I mean, so it's not. Um, you can just be more of an anthropologist there rather than somebody who's going to dig in and really have a debate. Um, all right, my conversation with Ross Douthat, right? Like we did not agree. That had the quality of a debate about religion. I think he's more of a religious extremist than people appreciate, and I feel some of that came out in our conversation. I mean, he's surprisingly uh, extreme in his uh, claims to his faith claims, given that he's also trying to function as a normal journalist at the New York Times. Um,
What would you tell a man who's been late to everything for 40 years to set, no matter how hard he tries to?
but so those are not totally. I mean, those are somewhat adversarial conversations, but they're not. To talk to someone like I don't know. Again, I just brought up Hassan Piker at random. Um, Someone like him, I mean, he's just kind of a performance artist. I mean, he's a deeply confused, I think, fairly amoral, fairly juvenile person in his ethics, right? I mean, he's a, um, and he's just a bit of a nutcase, and dishonest.
Yep. Couldn't agree more, Sam. Thank you very much.
And
And
so
moving
it's
on.
just such a mess. I mean, there's so much bad faith that you have to anticipate going into a conversation like that. My first question is why do it? I mean, what's because it can stand the chance of being genuinely confusing, certainly to anyone who's sort of in his audience, right? Because there's just so much. It's again, it's asymmetric warfare. It's so much easier to make a mess than to clean it up, right? That's why I wouldn't talk to someone like RFK Jr. I mean, RFK Jr. is basically a nutcase, right? I mean, there's something wrong with the guy. He's a confabulatory. He's a liar, absolutely a liar, but he's also a kind of a confabulator, right? He's a bullshit artist, and also I just think a little crazy, right? So you're dealing with all of that. It's very hard to do in real time. Again, for the kinds of things he's crazy about, what you want is someone who's deep in the weeds on the science of vaccines and immunology and just virology and all of it, right? So I'm the wrong guy to have that conversation. I've always said that. It's not to say I couldn't take a month of my life and get up to speed on some of that, but it's just not worth a month of my life to do that. So all of it is just at this point, you have to have a life is too short module in your brain, and consult it occasionally. And for many of these conversations that people seem to want me to have,
I mean, I do agree with Sam. Like, especially when you're someone like Sam, where your time is quite valuable and the conversations you have are quite valuable. Um, Not every conversation is worth it. I mean, Dave Smith's going around on X saying, debate me, debate me, debate me. And Matt Walsh finally made a comment. It's like, not everything needs to be a debate in a podcast, bro. Like, but again, conversations are awesome. I have my own podcast. I think podcasts are awesome, but there are experts in certain fields that when, again, we should trust, but there is low trust when it comes to society about certain experts. And I understand that, but how do we bring back their expertise and how do we bring back their ability to trust what they say? That's going to be a hard road to climb, I think. But yeah, there certainly are conversations that are not always worth having, right? It's like, what's the end goal? What's the aim? Is there any progress that can be made, right? Things of those nature. Is it worth my time? Should I spend my time on something else?
I have to say life is too short for many of them. It's not to say, I mean, given the right candidate, I might jump at the chance. Again, I mean, so the Monk debates, I think, I think it was, they asked me to debate Tucker Carlson, and I was surprised to find myself saying yes without any reservation, really, because Tucker has become such a fixture in our politics. But that seems to have evaporated. So I don't know what happened there. I'm sure he said no. But so I would do that. I would do something like that. But it really has to be worth it.
Yeah. Well, Rogan has said he doesn't want to talk to you publicly until you've debated Brett Weinstein. Is that something you consider doing?
Oh, well, no. I mean, for the same reasons I wouldn't debate RFK Jr. I mean, it's just this is it's very disconcerting not to know whether someone has lost their mind, right? Like because when you look at someone like Brett speak, he just seems to be the picture of reasonableness, right? He's not getting blown around by his emotional life, or certainly not in any obvious way when he's certainly not on a podcast with Rogan. So he's not an Alex Jones like character where you look at the way he's delivering the lines and you think, okay, this is kind of a case study in chemical imbalance or something, right? Like what we need is a psychopharmacologist before anything else happens here, so that we can try to get this guy back to some physiological baseline. That's not happening with Brett at all, and yet the things he says are equivalently crazy, and the certitude with which he says them, it's just it's totally indefensible, right? So, I mean, you take his recent appearance on Rogan and you stick his claims into any LLM, and what you get is just a
I mean, I think Sam should do that. I think Sam should have a debate with Brett to kind of maybe squash their beef, also clear out some of their ideas. And then I would like Sam then to go back on Joe Rogan and maybe squash their beef and also explain his views about all these types of things, maybe about Israel and the war and jihadism and Trump. And so I think there is a pathway forward for Sam that could be worth it. And it does start with debating Brett or having a conversation with him, a public one. And maybe it seems like he doesn't want to do that. So fair enough. He can do whatever he wants.
litany of obvious errors. And I did that for Joe. I sent him a link to my, you know, chat GPT session. Like, Joe, just here's a sanity check. Listen to what the robots say about what Brett was giving you on this most recent podcast. And he didn't seem to want to do that. So he's still convinced that Brett was right about everything, though Brett thinks that 17 million people were killed outright by the vaccines, and that ivermectin is still worth taking. Um, I don't know how to interact with that, but what it requires is, if it were going to be done at all. I mean, Brett is just Brett is not someone to take seriously on this topic. But if you were forced to take him seriously because he's made so much noise about it, what you want is someone who's deeper in the weeds on the relevant science than either of us are, and let that guy or gal have the debate. And that's what I urged Joe to do. I mean, Joe was wrong there. I wasn't urging that I talk about, do a postmortem on COVID about, RFK Jr. or Brett or anyone else, any other lunatic he's had on his podcast. I was urging that he have the relevant experts do it. Right? I mean, it's just not. It's not my wheelhouse, right? It should, I'm not going to, unlike many of these guys, I'm not going to pretend it's my wheelhouse, knowing that I can, be a quick study and sound like I know what I'm talking about. I'm not an immunologist. I'm not a virologist. I'm not an epidemiologist. You want to be all three of those things.
Like everyone else on the internet?
Yeah. To have this.
Yeah, I mean, it's very true. Like the amount of people that are just fucking experts on everything on the internet is crazy. Yeah, not me. Most stuff goes over my head. Most stuff I have to read, learn, rewatch. It's a bit why I do these streams, right? It's to like learn in real time because I have like uninterrupted space to like watch some videos that I care about before I go back inside and hang out with my wife, right? And so I think Tim Ferriss says this all the time. Like some of the smartest people he's ever had on his podcasts say, I don't know. That's not a subject I'm well versed in. Can you tell me about it? Can you explain to me? Can I do some more research? But I think it would be cool to have a conversation between Brett Weinstein and Sam Harris, and the moderator is someone who really knows their stuff and can kind of fact check as you move through the space and figure out what Sam believes, what Brett believes, squash that out, get to the truth. Potentially, I think that's where maybe debate, more of a conversation would be worth it. And then maybe Joe and Sam can then have a conversation on Rogan's pod about some of the stuff that maybe Joe recently has got wrong that Sam thinks he's recently gotten wrong from some of his guests. That might be a cool pathway forward.
Conversation responsibly. But I know enough of what mainstream science thinks about what happened during COVID to know that Brett doesn't make any sense on this topic.
Yeah. Another question while we're on Rogan. You've been critical of Rogan's irresponsibility in the spread of misinformation, but he's taken basically the same approach since he was bullshitting stoned in his living room with an audience of a few thousand. Not his fault. His audience has become huge. Isn't the real problem that the epistemic institutions have trashed their credibility and the audience is lacking discernment?
Well, it's both, but I think I sent you this clip of that the algorithm served me of Joe talking to Theo Vaughn. And Theo was, just kind of melting down around his anxiety about everything. It seemed super worried about the war in Iran and worried about Israel. I guess. I mean, I forget about some of the specifics of the clip, but they went on for like 10 minutes, kind of casting doubt on everything, and then they seemed to have a lot of time for some CIA conspiracy theory,
Yeah.
which was getting delivered to them on looked like a short YouTube clip or a TikTok video by someone they liked, and it was probably a rehash of MK Ultra or some old story about the CIA putting LSD in the water, or something they did in the 1950s or something. But
Which they need to do again now.
Yeah, but it was a completely paranoid story about the CIA trying to make us all dumb so we will be more bovine and compliant. I mean, the image I got is just of two kind of pyromaniacs just lighting matches, on a.
To be honest, sometimes I actually have no idea what's going on until I open Monday.com.
And cool, man. You probably should if you run a business. Anyways, that's an ad. Back to Sam.
They had spent years soaking in gasoline, right? It's like and this really is it's relevant how large the audience is for this. It's relevant at just how much cultural damage is being done every time these guys basically play the just asking questions routine on socially combustible topics with tens of millions of people listening, right? It's completely irresponsible. It is genuinely dangerous. It's genuinely corrosive of our culture. It's genuinely misleading of their audience. And because they're not journalists, they feel no responsibility to get their facts straight. They certainly don't correct their errors. And I mean, they don't have the mechanism by which to correct their errors. It's just not.
They'll even admit that this might be some tinfoil.
Yeah, I think Theo said that in the middle of this clip. Yeah, like this might be tinfoil hat time, but still, they're still just flicking matches at everything, right? And the worst thing about all of this is their addiction to a conspiratorial framing of everything, right? That is if you could extract any lesson from what's happened to our politics in the last decade, and the role that people like Rogan have played in the unraveling of everything, and the way in which social media.
Sam's like co-host or business manager here said something about like should be on the discernment of the guest. Obviously, Joe Rogan is not responsible for his guests. like for his audience, excuse me. Joe Rogan is not responsible for his audience. Joe Rogan certainly is responsible for the guests he invites onto his show. Because as far as I know, Joe Rogan still just messages people to invite him on the show. So he's only having conversations with people he finds interesting. And I love that approach to podcasting. I do the same thing with my show. But since his audience is about 14 million people an episode, he does have some sort of responsibility to present information that, to the best of his knowledge, is potentially true or helpful or eye-opening or whatever the case may be. Um, Now, of course, he doesn't have control over his audience, what they do, what they think, what they feel about the information. Of course not. Of course not. And, but there has to be some sort of switch with Joe, because again, he's not just sitting on the couch stoned with his buddies where like 500 people are watching. I mean, 14 million people regularly watch his show daily. And that information has consequences, cultural consequences, election consequences, things of that nature. And so it's not solely on the audience to watch a 3-hour Joe Rogan episode and then fact check everything that they hear in that episode. That would be ridiculous. No human being has, one, the time to watch a 3-hour episode and then go fact check everything that happens in that episode. That's insane to put that pressure and onus on the audience. That should be on the people delivering the information. And I think that's what Sam's trying to get at, that Joe has kind of become irresponsible in that regard. Now, I've never met Joe Rogan, don't know him, don't know anything about him. I just know what we see on, with his show and on socials and all that stuff. And so maybe he'll change his approach. Maybe Sam will eventually get through to Joe and he might change his approach on how he does that, and might understand kind of the gravity of the situation. Because why Joe Rogan is so cool and so popular and so famous is just like a regular dude having conversations, and he's just shooting the shit, and it's organic and it's raw and it's real, and that's really powerful, and I love that shit. But he has to realize how much influence he has over the culture, and what that means for our society. And I think that's what Sam's trying to kind of get to. At least that's what I think. What do you guys think?
Media has weaponized all this, and the rise of people like Tucker and Candace and Nick Fuentes, and the fact that we've got Trump a second time around, and central to all of it is this addiction to conspiracy thinking and contrarianism, and just this, what I've called the pornography of doubt, right? And Joe has been as addicted as anyone.
Pornography of doubt. That's a good way to put it. And it seems that all conspiracy theories at this point lead back to the Jews in Israel. And that's also quite dangerous in that thinking. So pornography of doubt. Cool.
And has brought it to scale perhaps more than anyone. And it is just, it's totally unprincipled. It is genuinely confusing to millions of people. I mean, you got young people getting raised on a diet of this bullshit. It's divisive. It amplifies the worst in us, right? And it's just
guys, I'm on the road and I've lost 45 pounds. In fact,
and it's undermining of yes, our institutions have done something to lose credibility, right? They have become politicized in ways that they shouldn't have become politicized. Yes, all of that's true. The remedy for that is not a torrent of bullshit from podcasts and the platforming of proper lunatics and people who think they were denied the Nobel Prize when they have almost no scientific reputations to protect. No, the remedy is more good science and good journalism and real intellectual integrity, and holding institutions to account in serious ways, not spreading lies and half-truths and cockamamie conspiracy theories. And it's I mean, really, like you look at that clip of Joe and Theo, who are both good guys. What the paradox here for me ethically is that what I'm talking about is a species of evil, right? Given its consequences, it's a species of evil, right? It is like at the top of the list of what ails us in our society. It is the thing that is preventing us from solving real problems in this world. There's no question it is getting people killed and will continue to get people killed, right? It is absolutely toxic. And yet many of the people participating in this are just good guys who are just having fun, who are just entertaining. They think there's no stakes, right? They're just like athletes, right? They're just having fun. They're just playing a game. Joe's just playing a game, right? But it's a game with real consequences, right? It's like how would you play tennis if you knew that every time you lost a point, people would die, right? I mean, like that's the kind of game that's being played with information now. And so people like Joe and Elon and people who have audiences in the tens and even hundreds of millions have a real responsibility to get their heads out of their asses. And they're not showing any aptitude for doing that.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. I appreciate that. And I also agree. But I don't think Candace Owens or Tucker Carlson, I don't think those people are going to get their head out of their ass anytime soon. It's so far fucking in there.